Wonderful to see you all, and wonderful to be together, studying these really profound texts, opening up the stages of the path. And just to mention, we have the Heart Sutra up in the the upper left corner of the screen, Kuan Yin to the right, and Tara just over my left shoulder. So just setting up some of the things we're going to cover today in terms of the source of the teachings. So we are working with Words of My Perfect Teacher and the Jewel Ornament of Liberation by Atisha, the first one, and Gempopa, the second one. And these two great teachers went to the sutras and collected within all of the different teachings of the Buddha a structured presentation of the path, and also worked to bring in all of the great Indian philosophers and commentators who wrote the different texts on areas of the stages of the path. So now, over the next year, we're going to be going with a step-by-step presentation of how the path unfolds. And I'm starting with the first line now after the translators, or the composer's expression of their intention. Then the first line of Words of My Perfect Teacher has to do with how to listen to the teachings, what to avoid and what to do. And the first line is, the right attitude combines the vast attitude of bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, and the vast skill in the means of the Vajrayana conduct. So Words of My Perfect Teacher is slightly different from some of the Lamrim texts in that it's also a presentation of Nundro, or preparation for Vajrayana. So we're looking at two texts with, let's say, almost the same table of contents, but one has the addition of a Vajrayana lens or flavor included, where the other is purely Mahayana, keeping the Vajrayana as something for a later date in the teachings. So when we look at this one sentence about our attitude, the vast attitude of bodhicitta is the beginning of everything. This is why we do the opening prayers. Not only are we taking refuge, but we're setting up this incredible intention, this altruistic state of mind, which is different than other kinds of studying. So when we go to school, we're increasing knowledge for ourselves, and we may have had a major in college in which we're increasing skills in our chosen profession. So we have a sense of, this is developing my understanding, this is developing my skills. Whereas the vast attitude of bodhicitta has to do with seeing all sentient beings as inseparable from your loved ones. You may have a chosen family, you may have children and grandchildren, parents, siblings, and you know that if any one of them were suffering, no matter what your relationship is to them, you would put in every effort to help them. So we are cultivating the bodhicitta mind, which incorporates all sentient beings as our loved ones. And this is a progressive training, but for the purposes of listening to the Dharma, you can imagine if you were including yourself with all sentient beings and taking a moment to see the great suffering of being alive. The people in Palestine and Iran, not only the people displaced by the forest fires going on many continents, but all the animals, birds, insects, that are also being affected by their habitats becoming an inferno. So there's this quality of, I am listening today with rapt attention because something in this teaching might be useful somewhere to all of the different kinds of minds who are struggling and who don't have access to the Dharma and don't have a path out of their suffering. And from this perspective, we're not thinking of the Dharma as something that is possessed by just one particular religion. We're thinking about the Dharma as a sense of understanding how things are, understanding cause and result of all of our actions, understanding how our minds work, understanding what causes suffering in ourselves and other beings, and what leads us out of suffering. It's not unique to one particular institution. It's from our perspective, essentially looking at how does the world come to be in such terrible suffering, and how do we liberate ourselves and others? What are the practical steps that we take that lead to a transformation of our minds and of our, essentially of our heart minds? So that's the ground, that's the attitude. And then if we were to then open that up further, if we were to incorporate a sense of the relative and the absolute in this attitude, we would take a perspective that visualizes the absolute. And this is one of the skillful means of the Vajrayana. And over this next year, we'll be talking more and more about Vajrayana and a Vajrayana practice group. So from the perspective of the Vajrayana, we are looking at the circumstances of the teaching and visualizing the 5 perfections. Now, this is beneficial from our side. It's in no way making the teacher into something they're not. It's more, can each of us visualize the absolute at the same time as the relative? And from that perspective, we're looking at the 5 perfections: the perfect teacher, the perfect teaching, the perfect place, the perfect disciples, the perfect time. So from that perspective, we are visualizing ourselves as the assembly when the Buddha taught. All of these teachings, as I said, go back to the Buddha, and we're visualizing whoever is teaching as our connection directly to the Buddha, as though the Buddha were there, or our connection to the lineage as though Gampopa were sitting here, or Atisha. So it has nothing to do with the person transmitting the teachings. It's allowing our imagination, just in the same way we would like to imagine our bodhicitta mind is perfected, we're allowing ourselves to abide in the absolute for the time of the teaching. And this is why also when a teaching is given, visualizing the perfect teaching, when one is teaching Dharma, one has the responsibility to transmit only the Dharma, not flavored by opinions, not inconsistent in any way with the complete resonance or harmony with the particular teachings that have been carried like medicine that cures diseases. You don't add or subtract to that, you give the tested medicine. For those of you who have attended any of the Sharvasti retreats, His Holiness has written a new commentary, and every time he presents an idea, he's saying, this is not my opinion. And then he gives several sources from commentaries and from sutras or the Buddha's teachings of where this particular view of how to work with meditation in this way is supported by the great knowledge of wisdom that's been carried since the time of the Buddha. The perfect place would be visualizing ourselves, let's say, on top of Vulture Peak, where the Heart Sutra was given, or in Sharvasti, where the Buddha taught so many times. And the perfect time has to do with, on the one hand, we time some of the important teachings to the sacred Buddha holidays. For instance, we started this text on the great turning of the wheel day. And some of the teachings that are given by the great masters, and for instance, the teaching in Madison and the teaching the upcoming Vajrayana weekend are given on the big Buddha holidays, the Buddha descending from Tushita heaven is the holiday in which the teachings in Madison that I'm giving will be on that weekend. And I've decided the dates for the Vajrayana class to open to coincide with the miracle day of the Buddha in, I believe it's the weekend of February 7th. So when you look at why do teachings generally occur at this particular time, in the Buddhist calendar, Sagadawa, the birth and enlightenment of the Buddha holiday, that's a month-long holiday that's considered very sacred. And you look at the major teachers, and they're all giving significant teachings at that time. So there's a sense from the perspective of presentation, acknowledging the time, and also from the perspective of the great teachers, looking at the actual time we are living through. And in the case of the Sharvasti teachings, His Holiness sort of turned the Drikung ship with introducing the Sharvasti teachings as an acknowledgement of our time, that the way the path of meditation had been presented in terms of a 3-year retreat curriculum is not consistent with how most people are studying right now. So he created this Sharvasti course for this particular time. So it is training our minds when we're listening to a teaching to hold some aspect of the absolute, and to be clear what is a Dharma teaching and what is not a Dharma teaching. So we could say for the period of this 20 minutes, this is a Dharma teaching that is given with a clear source. I may change examples to contemporary examples, but not any changes to the actual teaching. And that's different from casual conversations, opinions, let's say the running of the organization. Those are very different situations. So we're invited to put our mind in this visualization if we're starting to embark on the Vajrayana class as a training, just like holding our pure intention of benefiting all sentient beings is holding the Mahayana perspective and aspiration as we listen to Dharma teachings. So it's all a way of enlarging our heart mind. So for instance, I'm taking, a really extraordinary class with Khandro Rinpoche, and she's been teaching for, I think this is the 7th year. And generally, because I consider her teachings so precious, I listen to them in retreat. So I create either a day of retreat or I have them during a period of time where I'm in retreat so that my mind is clear from any other subjects, only thinking in terms of meditation, and with that clarity and holding both the altruistic intention and the view of listening directly to a Buddha teaching. Then when I'm studying with her, I have absolute rapt attention on every word that she's saying. And because her teachings are so clear and in such depth, then I have a body of experience that I carry to you as a teacher. Similarly, when I'm in the presence of His Holiness or Garchen Rinpoche, I'm totally inseparable from their great wisdom, and to the degree that I'm capable, having single-pointed attention. And from the perspective of another way of understanding this is seeing their Buddha nature actualized to a degree that is an example of actualization that I want to aspire to and follow. And sitting in the perfect assembly, when we're surrounded by the whole Drikung Sangha, there's the support of everyone's attention. And in these big teachings that His Holiness gives, people come not only from all over the world, but there's permission for people to leave retreat. They come down from the mountains. There's the support of every being who is further along on the path ahead of us, holding their best attention, so that it becomes a collective attention. So to the best of our ability, this is the ideal way, and we are growing in our capacity to hold the ideal. And then how does it help? When you have that kind of attention, then you tend to remember and integrate what's being said. So that moves to the classic example in attitude, and the classic example is of a pot. So if you have a pot and the pot is overturned, then you can't fill the pot with water. So if we are listening to the teachings and we're on Zoom, and you might like click off and go get a cup of coffee, or open up another window and scroll through the newspaper, or respond to, some of your family who are nearby, if your mind is distracted, that is the pot upside down. You're not really listening, you're not really paying attention, and so the Dharma can't be poured into the pot. Then the second one is a pot with a hole in it. If you don't review the teachings, contemplate the teachings, it's like a leaking pot. You're pouring the teachings in, but you don't remember a thing. It just pours in, and 5 minutes later, you're having Sunday lunch and you don't remember a thing that's said. And then the third example I find very interesting. It's the pot with poison in it. So if we don't have a bodhicitta intention, if we're listening because we want to use the teachings in some way to gratify our ego, to claim some sort of fame. Sometimes Dharma students will list, I've studied this, and this, and they say that with a sense of pride, and not only pride, but one-upsmanship kind of attitude. Or if you don't contemplate the teachings and misinterpret them, get confused about them, the Dharma can be a weapon that you use in an inner way or an outer way. So you can use the Dharma to disparage yourself, or you can use the Dharma to make someone feel bad about themselves. If we listen to the Dharma with great poison, let's say jealousy or greed or anger or desire, those are all different qualities of listening with the sense of a pot that's compromised. And so this is an ancient example, so how do we think about it today? Other qualities of skillful listening or unskillful listening. And one thing that I would say as a note as we go through these teachings is these are teachings from a wildly different time. Minds haven't changed so much, but expression, how things are expressed, have changed. And the audience, how you express now is not necessarily how you would express to an audience 3,000 years ago. And our cultural attitudes are very different than the Asian cultural attitudes of that time. So when we hear something that we have a strong reaction to, like last class when we were talking about the concept of qualities of a teacher, and it might be triggering, or it might be in contrast to our particular culture, which is anti-authoritarian. When we hear things that we have a reaction to, the reaction is good. We're meant to examine the teachings. The example is hammer them, twist them, really see how they are indicative of the truth. So test them as much as you can. But at the same time, when we are working with this source that has been tested for centuries of practitioners, we can have the attitude of, I don't understand this right now. This is not working for me right now. So instead of letting it increase the triggering or generating anger, just saying, I'm going to put this on a shelf for right now. There may come a time later in my understanding of the Dharma when I understand it better, and when it might be useful for me or useful in situations for people that I'm trying to help. So I'm cautioning against outright rejecting or disparaging aspects of the Dharma. And I think that can be really important in the sense of having humility as we listen, and a sense of, I'm going to maintain openness, not in the sense of blind faith, but openness in the sense of, I'm going to keep testing this without outright rejecting it. So those are examples of the attitude of how to listen to the Dharma as we work with these teachings. And we didn't have time for much discussion in the last class, so I'm going to first open the breakout rooms for discussion, and then we'll have a group discussion. So your sense of the effectiveness of the opening prayers to open the bodhicitta attitude, are you paying attention to that as an intention of listening to the teachings, switching from our cultural view of I'm learning from me to I'm learning for each and every being that that I aspire to have the attitude of caring for as my loved ones? Do you feel that it's interesting or appropriate for you to develop the 5 perfections in the Vajrayana attitude, and how might you think about those? And what is your response when you hear to the example of the pot? How does that challenge you? And how do you become, like the other example would be the pot of pure gold that can hold all of the teachings?